Shrek turns 25 this year, and in May, it's coming back to theaters, which means a whole new generation of kids will sit in the dark and watch a green ogre fall in love with a princess who turns into an ogre at night. But listen, Shrek isn't a movie about an ogre. It's a movie about what happens when two people who have spent their entire lives believing they don't deserve to be loved try, anyway, to love each other. And once you see it that way, you can't unsee it. The franchise has made several billions of dollars, and the reason this story refuses to die isn't the fairy tale parody, and it isn't the soundtrack, and it isn't the nostalgia. So let's talk about what that truth actually is, because the kids who watched this in 2001 are adults now, and a lot of us are out here trying to love somebody or be loved by somebody while carrying around a version of ourselves we're convinced nobody could ever want. Let's start with Shrek, the character. When we meet him, he lives alone in a swamp surrounded by signs that say, "Keep out," "Beware ogre," "Stay back." And the very first thing the movie shows you is a mob of villagers with torches coming to kill him. He scares them off, he laughs, he goes home. And the audience reads this as, tough guy, doesn't care, loves his solitude. But that's not what the swamp is. The swamp is armor. There's a piece of fan analysis repeated across years of online commentary that suggests Shrek was sent away by his parents around the age of 7 with the warning that because of how he looked, he would be hated his whole life and would never find a happy ending. You should treat that detail as fan canon, not officially confirmed. But the emotional shape of it is what matters, because the character on screen behaves exactly like someone who internalized that message before he was old enough to question it. He doesn't think the villagers are wrong about him. He thinks they're correct. He is the monster, in his own head, long before any torch ever shows up at his door. And that's the most important thing to understand about him, because when somebody truly believes they're unworthy of love, they don't sit around waiting for proof. They build a life that makes the proof unnecessary. They move to a swamp. They put up signs. They growl when anybody walks within 20 feet, because if you scare people off before they get close, you never have to find out whether they would have stayed. This is what psychologists call the avoidant attachment style. The core belief is, I must be self-reliant, because closeness equals loss of control, and loss of control equals being hurt. The avoidant doesn't actually want to be alone. The avoidant wants to be safe. And solitude has been the only place that has ever felt safe. So when Donkey shows up, what does Shrek do? He's mean. He insults him, tries to scare him off, slams doors, makes it as unpleasant as possible to be near him. And he doesn't hate Donkey. It's just because his whole nervous system is wired to push first before anyone can choose to leave. If you have ever been the person who got close to someone and watched them get colder the closer you got, you have met an avoidant wound in real life. And then there's the onion speech, the single most therapist-quoted moment in modern animated film. Ogres are like onions. They have layers. On the surface, it's a joke, a frustrated character trying to explain himself to a sidekick who keeps misreading him. But listen to what he's actually saying. He's not asking Donkey to peel the layers back. He's explaining why the layers exist. He's saying, there's something underneath, and I've spent my whole life making sure nobody gets to see it, because the last time anybody saw it, they reacted with disgust. That's not really a character quirk. That's a thesis statement. Now let's talk about Fiona, because Fiona's wound looks completely different on the outside and is structurally identical on the inside. When we meet her, she's been locked in a tower for years, waiting for a knight in shining armor to rescue her. And she has rehearsed this rescue. She has memorized the script. She knows exactly how it's supposed to go. The knight is supposed to slay the dragon, climb to the highest room, kiss her, and break the spell. And when Shrek shows up, she's appalled. And it's not really because he's an ogre. Shrek wasn't following the script. This is not how it's supposed to go, she says, over and over. She's not being a brat. She's panicking, because the script is the only thing keeping her safe. Fiona has a curse. Every night, she transforms into an ogre, but the curse itself isn't really the wound. The wound is what she has decided the curse means about her. She has decided that the ogre is her ugly, secret, unacceptable self. The version of her that nobody can ever see, because if anybody sees it, they will know that the princess is a costume. And so she has spent her entire life perfecting the costume, the prissiness, the formal speech, the expectations, the hair, the performance of femininity so flawless that nobody could ever suspect there was anything underneath. This is what shame researchers like Brené Brown have spent decades describing. Brown defines shame as the intensely painful belief that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. It is, fundamentally, the fear of disconnection, and the way shame survives is through secrecy. The unspeakable thing has to stay unspeakable, or the whole house collapses. So Fiona builds a self-designed entirely to make sure the unspeakable thing is never spoken. The polite princess is not who she is. The polite princess is who she has to be, to make sure nobody finds out who she is. Her attachment style isn't avoidant like Shrek's. It's anxious. The core belief is, I must earn love, because love is conditional, and the moment I stop performing, it will be taken away. So she scripts the rescue, the kiss, and the prince. Because if she can just get the externals right, maybe nobody will ever look closely enough to see the rest. Now look at what we have. A man who is convinced he is a monster on the outside, and a woman who is convinced she is a monster on the inside. And these are the two people the movie is going to put in a room together and say, figure it out. Here's the part that nobody talks about. People do not fall in love randomly. The research on this is uncomfortable. Bessel van der Kolk, the trauma researcher whose book, The Body Keeps the Score, has been one of the most cited works in popular psychology for over a decade now, has written extensively about how traumatized people compulsively expose themselves to situations that echo their original wounds, because the familiar feels like home, even when home is the place that hurt you. We are drawn to people whose wounds match ours. We mistake recognition for chemistry. We feel that flash of, oh, you understand. And what we're actually feeling is, oh, you're broken in a shape that fits the broken shape of me. This is why Shrek and Fiona work. Not because opposites attract, because they are, underneath the costumes, the same person. Both of them believe their true self is monstrous. Both of them have built elaborate defenses to keep anybody from finding out. Both of them are so used to performing the version of themselves the world demands that the actual self has gone almost silent. And the moment they get close enough to smell it on each other, something in both of them unlocks. Watch the campfire scene. Watch the moment where Fiona catches a frog and blows it up like a balloon. Watch the moment where she eats a bug, where she belches, where she laughs at his jokes about earwax. That's not character development. That's a wounded person testing the water. She is letting out a tiny piece of the unspeakable self, just a sliver, just enough to see if he flinches. And he doesn't flinch, so she lets out a little more. This is the actual mechanism of intimacy between wounded people. It is one person showing you a piece of the thing they've been hiding their whole life and watching your face for the moment you decide they're disgusting. And the reason it works between them is that he's doing the same thing. When he tells her about being chased out of villages, when he says, people take one look at me and go, ah, help, run, a big stupid ugly ogre, he is showing her a layer. He is letting her see the part of him that has hurt the most. And she doesn't flinch either. Two wounded people, both showing each other the wound, both keeping their faces neutral, both quietly thinking, is it possible that I am not, in fact, the worst thing that has ever happened to me? And then they ruin it. Of course they ruin it. Wounded people always ruin it the first time, because the wound is faster than the love. This is the sunset scene. Fiona is talking to Donkey about her curse. She says, who could love a beast so hideous and ugly? Princess and ugly don't go together. And what she means, very specifically, is the ogre form, the nighttime self, the thing she becomes when the sun goes down. She is talking about the part of herself she has been ashamed of since she was a child. But Shrek is standing outside the door, and Shrek hears the words beast and hideous and ugly, and his entire wounded nervous system fires before his ears even finish processing the sentence. He doesn't think, wait, that doesn't sound like me. Who is she talking about? He thinks, of course she thinks I'm hideous. I am hideous. I have always been hideous. I knew this would happen, and I let myself forget it for one night. And now, here is the proof. And here is the part the movie is brave enough to admit. Hurt people, hurt people. Shrek's cruelty toward Donkey at the start of the film, his territorial aggression, his "what are you doing in my swamp" rage, none of that is who he is. It's who his wound has trained him to be. When you have been hurt enough times, you learn to hurt first. Not because you want to, because you have learned, at the deepest possible level, that being kind first is what got you broken. And in the misunderstanding scene, when Shrek goes cold on Fiona, that's the same wound. He's not punishing her. He's protecting himself. He is making sure he is the one who pulls away first, because the alternative is letting her pull away first, and that is unsurvivable. This is the second great truth of the film. The people who are hardest to love are very often the people who need it most. Their difficulty is not evidence of their unworthiness. It is the symptom of the wound. And the only way through the wound is for somebody to keep showing up, even on the days the wounded person is doing everything they can to make them leave. Donkey is the one who finally drags the truth out of both of them. In the real world, you usually do not have a donkey. In the real world, this is where most relationships end. Two wounded people, each absolutely certain the other one is the one who walked away first, both telling themselves a story about how they were right not to trust it. The reason the kiss at the end of the first movie is more radical than people give it credit for is not the kiss itself. It's what happens after. In every fairy tale you have ever heard, true love's kiss transforms the beast into something beautiful. The frog becomes a prince. The beast becomes a man. The ugly thing is fixed. And Fiona, lying there waiting for the curse to be broken, fully expects this. She has, after all, written the script. She is supposed to wake up beautiful. She is supposed to wake up as the version of herself she has been performing her whole life. Instead, she wakes up an ogre. And the spell, as it turns out, was not, "You become beautiful when true love kisses you." The spell was, "You take true love's form." The kiss doesn't fix her. The kiss reveals her. The thing she has been hiding her entire life. The unspeakable secret. The monster in the closet. The version of herself she was sure no one could ever want. That's what true love looks like. That's the real her. And the wound does not get healed. The wound gets loved. This is the entire thesis of the franchise in a single shot. Two wounded people, neither of whom is fixed, looking at each other in their unfixed forms and choosing to stay. Now let me tell you why Shrek 2 is, structurally, the more honest movie. Because falling in love is the easy part. What's hard is what comes next. In Shrek 2, the couple has to go meet Fiona's parents, and the parents are horrified, not just because Shrek is an ogre, because Fiona is now also an ogre, and they had been hoping the curse would be broken, and she would come back as the polite, performing princess they remembered. King Harold can barely look at either of them. The dinner scene is one of the most uncomfortable scenes in any animated movie, and it's uncomfortable in a very specific way. It's uncomfortable because every wounded person in the audience has lived through some version of it. The moment when the people whose approval you have spent your life chasing finally meet the person you actually love, and you watch their faces, and you can see them deciding that you have made a mistake. This is the test that breaks most wounded relationships. Not the relationship itself, the world's reaction to it. Because the moment the world says you don't belong together, the wound on both sides starts doing its math. Fiona's wound says, "See, I knew this was going to happen. I should have stayed in the tower." Shrek's wound says, "She deserves better. Of course she deserves better. She always deserved better. And I have been pretending I was enough for her this whole time." And so Shrek, in the most psychologically devastating decision of the entire franchise, drinks a potion that turns him human, a potion that turns him into the prince that the world has decided Fiona deserves. Watch what just happened. A wounded man, the moment external validation gets withdrawn, decides that the solution is to stop being himself, to erase the actual person his partner fell in love with, to become the performance the world demands. This is one of the most common patterns in wounded relationships, and it is almost always misdiagnosed. It looks like nobility. It looks like, "I just want what's best for her." It is not nobility. It is shame, dressed up in a hero costume. The fairy godmother in this movie is not just a villain. She is the embodiment of every voice that ever told a wounded person, if you would just become a slightly different version of yourself, everything would be okay. She runs a whole industrial complex devoted to this lie. Her entire business model is selling people the potion that makes them into who they think they should be. And the lie is seductive, because it's almost true. If Shrek became human, his in-laws would accept him. The villagers would accept him. Society would accept him. The wound would finally get the external approval it has spent its whole life chasing. But the cost is the actual relationship. Because Fiona didn't fall in love with the prince. She fell in love with the ogre. She fell in love with the version of him that was unacceptable to everyone else. That's the whole point. That's what made it real. And so the climax of Shrek 2 is Fiona, looking at the human, prince-shaped, society-approved version of her husband and saying the line that I will go to my grave defending as the most psychologically sophisticated line in any animated movie. I want the ogre I married. Listen to what she's actually saying. She's saying, I have done enough work on myself that I no longer need you to be acceptable. I have done enough work on myself that I no longer need the world to approve of us. I have done enough work on myself that I can see the difference between the real you and the improved you, and I can tell you, with my whole chest, that the real you is what I want. The improved you is a stranger. The improved you is the lie I spent my whole life trying to be. I am not interested in marrying that lie. I want the one that's actually here. Wounded people spend years, sometimes decades, trying to earn this sentence from someone. Some of them never get it. Some of them get it once, from one person, and that one sentence rewires something at the bottom of their nervous system that no amount of therapy alone could ever reach. Because here's what the research says about this. Attachment styles are not destiny. The data on this varies by study, but the broad finding is consistent. Roughly 30 to 40% of people show stability in their attachment style from childhood into adulthood, which means roughly 60 to 70% of people show some degree of meaningful change. About 30% of people change in significant measurable ways across their lifespan. This is what Mary Main, one of the foundational researchers in attachment theory, called earned secure attachment. People who started out anxious or avoidant or disorganized, and who, through some combination of therapy, self-reflection, and what researchers call corrective relationship experiences, developed a secure attachment as adults. A corrective relationship experience is exactly what it sounds like. A relationship in which somebody consistently gives you the safety, reliability, and emotional attunement that was missing from your formative experiences. Not because they're trying to fix you, because they're just being a safe person in your direction, day after day, until your nervous system slowly starts to update its model of what other humans are like. This is what Shrek and Fiona are doing for each other across these movies. Slowly, badly, with a lot of mistakes, with whole sequences where they make it worse. They are providing each other with corrective experiences. Every time Fiona doesn't flinch, when Shrek shows her his ogre rage, she is rewriting one tiny line in the script his parents and the villagers gave him. Every time Shrek looks at her ogre form and doesn't look away, she is rewriting one tiny line in the script the curse gave her. This is not a kiss, and it's fixed situation. This is years of repeated, daily, often unsexy work. And the franchise is honest enough to admit that even after all of it, the wound doesn't fully go away. Which brings us to Shrek Forever After, the movie everyone forgot, the fourth one, the one nobody quotes. It is, in many ways, the most psychologically honest movie in the series, because it asks the question that almost no romance ever asks. What happens after, happily ever after, when the wound starts whispering again? Shrek, in this movie, has everything. He has Fiona. He has 3 kids. He has community acceptance. The villagers no longer come with torches. He's a celebrity. People want autographs. And he's miserable. Not because he doesn't love his family, because he has spent his whole life identifying as the monster who doesn't get this. And now that he has it, his nervous system doesn't know what to do. The familiar feeling, the one he calibrated his whole identity around, was being rejected, being feared, being alone. That feeling was home. And now home is gone, replaced by something he was never trained to recognize, and his wound is starting to whisper that maybe this happiness isn't really his. He could be an imposter in his own life. Maybe he should burn it down so he can feel like himself again. This is one of the most under-discussed patterns in wounded people who finally get what they wanted. Once you get the thing, your wound doesn't disappear. Sometimes, your wound gets louder, because the wound has spent your whole life telling you a story about who you are, and the new evidence is contradicting the story, and contradiction is intolerable, so the wound starts looking for ways to bring the evidence back in line. This is why people self-sabotage at the moment of greatest happiness, and why people pick fights right before the wedding, why they cheat on the partner they love, or quit the dream job, or push away the friend who finally showed up for them. It is not because they don't want it. So Shrek makes a deal with Rumpelstiltskin. He trades a single day of his old life, the dangerous, scary, alone version of himself, for one day from his childhood. And of course, Rumpel takes a day Shrek can't afford to lose, and erases him from existence, and Shrek wakes up in a world where he and Fiona never met. In that alternate world, he gets exactly the version of himself he was nostalgic for, feared by villagers, alone in the swamp, unloved, and it is awful. It is exactly as awful as it always was, and he had just forgotten because the new life had given him something to compare it to. But here is the gift the movie gives you. In the alternate reality, where Shrek never came to rescue her, Fiona did not stay locked in the tower waiting. She became a warrior leader of an ogre resistance. This is the radical, almost subversive move the franchise makes near the end. Fiona's growth was never entirely dependent on Shrek. She was a full person before he showed up, and she would have been a full person if he never had. Their love is not the thing that completes either of them. Their love is something they each chose to build, on top of selves that were already whole, even when neither of them believed it. And the climax of the film is the two of them, in the alternate reality where they have no shared history, recognizing each other anyway. Something in them knows, something underneath the wound, underneath the costumes, underneath the swamp and the tower and the script and the curse, recognizes the other one, and chooses, again. Because that's what the franchise has been telling you the whole time. Choosing each other is not a thing you do once, it's a thing you do every day. Sometimes badly, sometimes after months of doing it badly, but you keep choosing. So what does this all mean for those of us who are not, in fact, ogres? What does this mean for the people in the audience who recognize themselves in this story and weren't sure why? Here's what I think the franchise has been quietly trying to tell you for 25 years. If you have ever loved somebody who was difficult to love, somebody whose wound made them push you away just when they most wanted you to stay, somebody whose silence you had to learn to translate, somebody who couldn't say the simple thing because the simple thing was too dangerous, you were not crazy. You were not making it up. You were watching a wound try to protect a person from the very thing the person needed. And honestly, if you have ever been that difficult person, if you have ever been the one who pushed the good thing away, because some part of you was certain you didn't deserve it, you weren't broken beyond repair. You were doing what your nervous system was trained to do, in an environment where it never got the chance to be trained otherwise. What two wounded people loving each other actually looks like is this. It looks like long stretches of beautiful, easy connection, interrupted by sudden, inexplicable cold spells, where one of you can't articulate what just happened, because what just happened was that something in the moment touched a wound that's older than the relationship. It looks like fights that are not really about the dishes, or the calendar, or the way somebody said the thing. The fights are about what the silence meant, what the tone implied, what your wound translated the neutral sentence into. It also looks like one person retreating, and the other person interpreting the retreat as abandonment and chasing, and the chasing making the retreat worse, and both of you ending up in opposite corners of the room, wondering how you got there. The moments of breakthrough, where the truth finally comes out, and you both cry, and you both feel closer than you've ever felt to anybody, followed, 3 weeks later, by the same fight, in a slightly different shape, because healing is not linear, and the wound did not vanish just because you named it once. It looks like learning, slowly, painfully, that the other person's monster is not so different from your own. It's not because it's easy, and honestly, it's not because the love has fixed anything either, but it's really because you have come to recognize something in the other person that you cannot find anywhere else, and you are willing to do the unglamorous, unsexy, daily work of building safety in their direction, day after day, until both of your nervous systems start to believe it. The franchise's most radical claim, the one that seems sweet and harmless on the surface and is actually subversive at the bottom, is this: happily ever after is not a destination. It's not the castle, or the crown, or even the potion that makes you human. It's not even the moment your in-laws finally approve. It's a swamp, with somebody who sees you in your actual form, including all the parts you've been hiding your whole life, and stays anyway. The curse was never the problem. The shame was. You cannot love somebody's shame away, because shame doesn't live where the love can reach it, but you can love each other through it. You can keep showing up. You can keep being the safe person in their direction, while they slowly do the work of believing they are worth it. And one day, sometimes, if both of you keep choosing it, the wound gets quieter. Not silent, quieter. Quiet enough that you can hear, underneath it, the sound of two people who finally, after a very long time, have stopped trying to perform somebody they're not. Shrek 5 comes out in 2027. The reporting says it's a big reinvention. The kids are teenagers now. Felicia, Fergus, Farkle, voiced by Zendaya and Marcello Hernandez and Skylar Gisondo, which means the next chapter of this story is about what happens when two wounded people who built a life together have to figure out how to raise children without passing the wound down, which is the next great unsolved problem of being a wounded person who got to build something good. I'll be there opening weekend, not because I think it'll be a great movie. I have no idea if it will, to be honest, but somewhere in there, I suspect, the writers are going to tell another quiet, accidental truth about love and damage and the work of being seen. And because, for 25 years now, this strange green franchise has been one of the only places in popular culture willing to look at two wounded people, point at them in their unfixed forms, and say, "This counts. This is real love. This is what it actually looks like. Let's hope it's a solid movie." But to be honest, another Shrek movie in this current climate of the world, I'll gladly take any day. I just need a break from reality.